Continue on in the same series we have been doing here. It's entitled The Big Picture. And the intent of our study on this topic is to take a look at hopefully we'll get connected here. There we go, great, thank you. The intent is to take a look at God's plan of redemption and to focus a bit of our attention on the future, to see, hopefully from God's perspective, what His plan is with this earth and with His creation. We are to learn from Scripture what this is. We do know that God's saints will have an important role to play, and we are given, to my surprise, much instruction on what that future time will hold. And it almost makes me think that since there is so much instruction, that we have a duty to understand what that is, so that when that time comes, we're prepared to take on that role. And it's a bit humbling to realize how much is there and how little I've studied on it. So I'm going to try and relay what I've learned. Hopefully it's old news to most of you, but if not, then you can be like me and learn with me. The reading that Brother Regan read out this morning, Isaiah 66, definitely is a very fitting chapter for what we'll be looking at today. I don't quote it in the talk here today, but it definitely ties in extremely well with what we'll be going over. So the overall theme so far, I guess the outline of where we've been going, we looked at initially God's manifestation over time, looking at through historical periods of time. We looked a bit, focused on the transition into the kingdom age and what type of changes will happen from those that are unaware of what will happen. We then looked at God's plan of redemption through Jesus. Last time we focused on the nature of immortality and what exactly that is. May not be what we initially assumed, but there's a lot of definition given on what the nature of immortality is about, and we talked about that. Today we're going to look at the role of the mortal Jews in the kingdom age. And then coming up, hopefully if we're given time, we'll look at the role of immortals and potentially also look at the role of the mortals in general in the kingdom age and how the form of worship will be in that time. So we'll definitely touch on some aspects of that here today. So that's our overall outline. So we'll just do a quick review of what we covered last time to bring it to remembrance. Last exhortation we covered the nature of immortality. In a simple review of the Scriptures, we can see that the nature of immortality as having characteristics that are satisfied, fulfilled, and an absence of weariness. An interesting point is that immortals will not be all-knowing. At least that's what Scripture seems to indicate. But will be with full perception and with full memories. That the redeemed immortals will be able to relate to mortality and to mortals. They'll remember what it is like to be under this constitution that we are in. There'll be a fully developed character. In other words, mature in all aspects. That some of the things that we are still developing will be matured, and we will be fully contributing. Another interesting point is that we retain individuality, but yet it'll be in harmony and in unity with God and His plan. So it talks about different gems, different stones, different brightness of stars. So there are differences. So we'll go on with our study here today about the roles of the mortal Jews in the kingdom. This is a point of introduction. We can recall that God has always shown an aspect of holiness as part of His plan. He's always drawn a line for something to be set apart, to be separate, to be selected. And that's a theme that has continued right from the start and will continue going forward. This can be seen in many aspects. There's too many to number, but just a few that jump out how Seth and Abel were set apart from Cain. How Adam was called out of Abram was called out of Ur. We know that instruction was given to Abram to circumcise. We know that is a sign of separation. We can think of what Brother Dan talked about last week, where Isaac's offering was in a particular place. It wasn't just any old place. It was a separate holy place. We know that Israel were the children of promise. At that time, not everyone of the world was children of promise. God's people, the children of Israel, were the children of promise. And as part of that, the children of Israel were given a divine law by angels, which involved every aspect of life. This law was all-encompassing: commercial, social, worship, instructions on food and sanitation, medicine, and even their military organization. All-encompassing. But the Gentiles around developed their own law and customs, which we know are far less superior and encompassing. And that's what we still see today in the laws that we have in our country, that they are only covering aspects of this. The law given to the children of Israel was all-encompassing. That's, of course, God's divine law given through Moses. Just to show evidence of this law by angels, I know this won't be news to anybody, but there's a couple of verses that show this. Acts 7 verse 53 speaks of this. This is Stephen's defense. And he says to those that he was given his defense to, "Ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do ye. Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them, which showed before of the coming of the Just One, of whom ye have now been the betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the disposition of angels, and have not kept it." Strong words, but true words. We know these were some of his final words. Also in Hebrews, Paul speaks and says, in verse 2 brings out the fact that it was wrought by angels. "Therefore ye ought to give more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time ye should let them slip. For the word spoken by angels was steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received a just recompense of reward." The children of God, the God of the children of Israel, was known as special and powerful. This was even recognized by ignorant pagans. And what brings to my mind is what we read recently in the first portion, where the Philistines knew that the Ark of the Covenant was coming out to battle. We know it didn't bode well for children of Israel in the end, but nonetheless the fear and knowledge of the God of Israel was very prevalent. 1 Samuel 4, 6-8. "And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, What meaneth the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And they understood that the ark of the Lord was come out into the camp. And the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God has come into the camp. And they said, Woe unto us, for there has not been such a thing heretofore. Woe to us, who shall deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness." So they were fearful, even though we know in this instance God was not with Israel because they were not following his ways. Continuing on, through the children of Israel, though the children of Israel desired and became like the nations surrounding them, Yahweh continued to send judges and prophets and kings who would urge and beckon the children of Israel to act and obey his holy people. Even though God's people did not follow his words, they did not listen to him, God still worked with them and still tried to make them a separate people, a special people, a people set apart. We know the children of Israel failed in this endeavor as a nation, and a new opportunity was given by Yahweh through the work of Christ, where any had opportunity to be his holy and select people by following prescribed instructions. And that's where we are blessed to have this opportunity. We can be considered set apart or separate or selected if we follow the instructions. This separateness will continue into the future, where selection and judgment will be righteously deployed upon the world. So not only in the former times, not only in these times, but also in the future time, this aspect of holiness will be a continuing theme. We realize now is our opportunity to show ourselves to be separate and worthy to be considered set apart in the day of judgment. If you look at Matthew 25, a number of verses here, 31 through 40, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and his holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats. Notice separating. And he shall set the sheep on the right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came to me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? And when saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king answered and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it unto the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. And we know, in contrast to this, those that were on the left, the goats, they did not do these things, and did not do these things to their brethren and sisters, and as such were considered of not doing these things to the prince. Though the Jews had God turn his back on them due to their lack of recognition and unwillingness to listen to his instruction, they will, in the kingdom age, be known again as his people. God has not ultimately given up on them. You see this in Isaiah 60, verses 1 to 3, also 15 to 16. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall rise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shalt suck of the breast of kings, and thou shalt know that I, the Lord, am thy Saviour and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. So we see that there will be a time when Israel will again be recognized as God's people. Also Isaiah 65, verses 7 through 14. For a small moment when I forsaken thee, but with great mercies I will gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness I will have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. For this is as the waters of Noah unto me. For as I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I would not be wroth with thee, nor rebuke thee. For the mountains shall depart, the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee, neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord that hath mercy on thee. O thou afflicted, tossed with a tempest, and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colours, and thy foundations with sapphires. I will make thy windows of agates, and thy gates of carbuncles, and all thy borders of pleasant stones, and all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. In righteousness shalt thou be established. Thou shalt be far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and terror, for it shall not come near thee. So we see great change coming for the house of Israel. Here's a change. The Jews will gain a place of respect in the world. Deuteronomy 28 verse 13. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them. We do know that there was a short period of time, the reign of Solomon, where they were in this position. It was temporal. But this is speaking of ultimately the time to come. Leviticus 26, verse 44. Then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy their Sabbaths, while she lieth desolate without them, and they shall accept the punishment of their iniquity, because they despise my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly, to break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God. God has spoken it, it will come true. It has not come true yet, so therefore it must yet come true. Yahweh has said that He will remember the children of Israel, as we've been reading. Jeremiah 31, verses 33 to 37. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts, in their hearts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Thus saith the Lord, which hath given the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar, and the Lord of hosts is His name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, and the fountains of the earth searched up beneath, I will cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord. So God's saying, if these things can be done, if He can measure the heaven above, we know we can't. Or the fountains of the foundations of the earth beneath be searched, we know we can't. If the sun gives up its light, or the moon in the night gives up its light, then these things will be. And what He's saying is that He will not cast off Israel. He will remember them. He will bring them back. The Gentiles will look to the Jews as blessed and with God. Zechariah 8, verse 23. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the spirit of him that is a Jew, saying, We will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. They'll be looked up to. Sacrifices will be restored in the future kingdom. It's not what we do now. We know sacrifices were an integral part of the time of the Mosaic Law. But this sacrifices will be restored in the future kingdom age. We also see that there will be 2 classes of priests that are to minister at the temple. This is found in Ezekiel 44, verses 10 through 16. Which we'll look up here. And the Levites that are gone away far from me, when Israel went astray, which went astray away from me after their idols, they shall even bear their iniquity. Yet they shall be ministers in my sanctuary, having charge at the gates of the house, and ministering to the house. They shall slay the burnt offerings and the sacrifice for the people. They shall stand before them to minister unto them, because they ministered unto them before their idols, and caused the house of Israel to fall into iniquity. Therefore I have lifted up mine hand against them, saith the Lord, and they shall bear their iniquity. And they shall not come near unto me, to do the office of a priest unto me, nor to come near to any of my holy things in the most holy place, but they shall bear their shame, and their abominations which they have committed. But I will make them keepers of the charge of the house, for all their service thereof, and for all that shall be done therein. But the priests of the Levites, the sons of Zadok, that kept the charge of my sanctuary, and the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near to me and minister unto me, and they shall stand before me to offer unto me the fat and the blood, saith the Lord. They shall enter into my sanctuary, and they shall come near to my table to minister unto me, and they shall keep my charge. When you look at this chapter, it can be a little bit confusing. Verses 10 through 14 are speaking about the mortal Jews, the mortal Levites in the future kingdom age. Verses 15 and 16 are speaking about the sons of Zadok. And then continuing on, verse 17 onward, again speaks about the natural Levites. It was very confusing to me, and found an answer on this in the Temple of Ezekiel's prophecy, where it identified that the original text had verses 15 and 16 set apart in parentheses. So it's like in contrast to. So when you're reading it, it can be a little confusing about what qualities are attributed to the natural Levites and what qualities are attributed to the sons of Zadok. And there is a very big difference. So we see here the two classes of priests are the Levites and the sons of Zadok. The Levites will not come near unto God by coming into the most holy place, as we've just read. They will be keepers of the charge of the house. They'll teach the people the difference between the holy and profane, and will cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. They'll be teachers. They'll help the ignorant to not be ignorant, and to understand and to learn. Very important job. They shall judge according to God's judgments, and will keep God's laws and statutes in all His assemblies. They shall be hallowed, and they shall hallow God's Sabbaths. So very important things, but yet they are not to come near unto God. This is because of their failings of their forefathers in the former times. They are learning through suffering of the failings of their fathers. So the sons of Zadok, how are they different? Well, we are told, as we just read, that they will come near unto God to minister. They shall come near to God's table, the fat and the blood, the bread and the wine. They will exercise supreme judgment on the house of God. They'll use the chambers of singers in the inner court, very close to the most holy. So the Levites will complete the menial, yet still important, duties of the priesthood, while the sons of Zadok will have the superior duties, superior priestly duties in the sanctuary. Again, we see separation here. We see distinction. Continuing in the theme. So we can see that these Levitical priests are mortals, and therefore must be restored. Must be the restored tribe of Levi. How do we know this? Ezekiel 42 verse 14 says, "When the priests enter therein, they shall not go out of the holy place into the utter court, but they shall lay their garments wherein they minister, for they are holy, and shall put on other garments, and shall approach those things which are for the people." Also Ezekiel, which we read already, Ezekiel 44:10 and 11, and the Levites that are gone away from me, when Israel went astray, which went astray from me from after their idols, they shall bear their iniquity. Yet shall they be ministers in my sanctuary, having charge of the gates of the house, ministering to the house. They shall slay the burnt offerings and the sacrifice for the people, and they shall stand before them to minister unto them. Going onward, again speaking about these Levitical priests. "And it shall come to pass that when they enter into the gates of the inner court, they shall be clothed with linen garments, and no wool, and shall come upon them, whilst they minister in the gates of the inner court and within. And they shall have linen bonnets upon their heads, and shall have linen breeches upon their loins, and they shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. And when they go forth into the utter court, even into the utter court to the people, they shall put off their garments wherein they ministered, and shall lay them upon the holy chambers, and they shall put on their other garments, and they shall not sanctify the people with their garments." So notice that they are caused to sweat. So they are not to wear anything that would cause them to sweat, therefore able to sweat. Continuing on, verses 20 and 20 through 22. Neither shall they shave their heads, nor suffer their locks to grow long. They shall only pull their heads. Neither shall any priest drink wine. They shall, when they enter into the inner court. Neither shall they take for their wives a widow, or her that is put away. But they shall take maidens of the seed of the house of Israel, or a widow that had a priest before. So there we know that those of immortals are not given in marriage, but here these priests will take wives. So obviously, yet still mortal. We're told other hints of these sacrifices being restored, animal sacrifices being restored in other parts of Scripture. Peter says in Acts 3 verses 20 and 21, and he shall send Christ, which before was preached unto you, whom the heaven must receive until the times of restitution of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of all His holy prophets since the world began. So the restitution of all things in the future. Jeremiah 33 verse 7, and I will cause the captivity of Judah and the captivity of Israel to return, and will build them as at the first. So what does that mean, as at the first? Well, again, a hint of reinstitution of animal sacrifice. Jeremiah 33 verses 14 to 18. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will perform the good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time will I cause a branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. In those days shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name wherewith she shall be called, the Lord our righteousness. For thus saith the Lord, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. Neither shall the priests, the Levites, want a man before me to offer burnt offerings, and to kindle meat offerings, and to do sacrifice continually. So we see here that when Israel is restored, that there will be burnt offerings, meat offerings, and sacrifice continually. Isaiah 56 verses 6 and 7. Also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to the Lord to serve Him, and to love the name of the Lord, to be His servants, everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and taketh hold of my covenant. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar, for mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. Again, burnt offerings and sacrifices. Psalms 51, verses 18 and 19. Do good in thy good pleasure unto Zion. Build thou the walls of Jerusalem. Then shalt thou be pleased with the sacrifices of righteousness, and with burnt offerings, and whole burnt offering. Then shall they offer bullocks upon thine altar. So, obviously, verse 18 relating to the future. Verse 19 speaking about animal sacrifice. These verses add significant scriptural evidence of the reinstitution of animal sacrifices. So we can be assured that this is the way of worship in the future age. The mortal Levites will complete their portion by meeting with the people as they approach, and by preparing the offerings before bringing the offerings to the sons of Zadok to be ultimately offered. The Levites would dwell in the corner towers during the times of their service. These are the corner towers of the Ezekiel's temple, while they would retire in the Holy Oblation when off duty. So when they were at the temple, it's thought that they would dwell in these corner towers, but when they were off duty, they would retire to their portion of land that is attributed to them in the Holy Oblation. It speaks of these towers having provisions for cooking. It's a little bit in code. You've got to look up the original. Again, this is credited to the work of Brother Sully. Ezekiel 46, verses 23 and 24. And there was a row of building round about them four. And it was made with boiling places under the rows round about. And he said unto me, These are the places of them that boil, where the ministers of the house shall boil the sacrifice of the people. So how do we know this is cooking? Well, the phrase boiling places under the rows is translated by Strong's as cooking places that were part of the wall. So these are in the towers. I'll just show quickly here, just to bring to remembrance the depiction here. Let's see if hopefully I got... I'm going to have to go to the first picture. These corner towers, 4 of them here, are thought to be where the priests, the Levites, will dwell while they're giving regular service, when they're getting rest. Again, mortals needing sleep. So continuing on, the Jews will be gathered to the land promised to Abraham. We know this is ongoing now, but there will be, again, a further, more significant gathering to the promised land, a gathering of the Jews. We know when Ezekiel 48 describes these allotments and subdivisions of land. The land will be divided into parallel portions, we are told. All tribes, except for Levi, have a portion, and each portion is a strip of land extending from east to west, east unto the west side. The central portion is for the prince, and is called the Holy Oblation. And within there are 3 different divisions. The holy portion for the priests, meaning specifically the sons of Zadok. And that's found in these quotes here. Ezekiel 45, verses 1 to 4, and also in Ezekiel 48, 9 to 11. So a couple spots quoted. The second part is a portion of it for the Levites. So they do have a portion. They don't have a full strip from east to west like the other tribes. But they do have a portion immediately adjacent to the temple. Ezekiel 45 verse 5 and also Ezekiel 48 verses 13 and 14. If you want to look those up later. And finally, the third part of the Holy Oblation is the possession of the city. It's described in Ezekiel 45 verse 6. So again, we'll just look at a quick chart of that. So you can see it here. To the north, we have all the tribes, and not all the tribes, a number of the tribes, and to the south, with this portion of the prince is in this band here, with a square, 25,000 reeds, square portion. The northern part, sons of Zadok. The central part, the portions for the Levites, and the bottom part, a portion, possession of the city, with the temple being thought to be centered on the southern border of the sons of Zadok portion, which also borders the northern part of the portion for the Levites. Put it in full perspective. That's this brown strip here in the middle, which we know the temple will be centered at Jerusalem. The Jews will inherit land far beyond what they've ever had for possession previously. This includes the time of Solomon. Genesis 15 verse 18. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. There's some boundaries. Isaiah 19 verses 24 and 25. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt my people, and Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel my inheritance. So here again we start to see some boundaries. A third of Egypt and the land of Assyria. And of course, if we take a look at essentially the complete chapter of Ezekiel 45 gives further description. So if you look at the chart here, which covers most of the portion, you can see here from the Nile up to the Euphrates, which goes way off the page. So a vast extent of land compared to what small portion they have today or have ever had. So in summary, we'll draw our thoughts to a close here. We can see that Yahweh will remember the Jews and will still give them a holy portion for them in the kingdom age. We have learned that the Levites, these are the mortal Levites, will have an important responsibility to prepare the sacrifices and to meet with the remaining mortal populace of the world during the mortal populace's annual visit to the Temple Mount. We have learned that the former ways will be reinstituted, which will include animal sacrifice. We've learned that the Levites will bring the offerings to the outer court and will provide the offerings to the sons of Zadok for offering to God. We've learned that the Jews will be a special people and recognized as such by everyone, and the Gentiles will look to them as selected due to God being with them. So some concluding thoughts that will bring our minds to the bread and wine before us here. We know that Jesus offered one sacrifice for sin forever. We know that from Hebrews 2, verses 12 to 14. This man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins, forever sat down on the right hand of God, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified. So we know that the law of Moses pointed forward to the sacrificial Lamb of God who provided this offering. We also know that the age to come, animal sacrifices will point backward to this same as the same means of taking away sin. Again, pointing back to Christ's offering. We know that it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sin. We know that from Hebrews. I think 10 it is. But it's through Christ. This is true of the Mosaic offerings and is also true of the millennial offerings. The only offering that can take away sin is that of Christ's offering. We have reviewed thoughts that help define to us this upcoming era, impending era, and could be very soon. We are to prepare ourselves so that we are aware and ready to deploy our services in this new era, where Yahweh's name will be made manifest throughout the earth. This preparation and transforming is through our learning of God's ways and allowing it to center on our hearts, to truly be our driving force in our life for our thoughts and actions.